Good afternoon. Today I'm going to be reviewing the Addiesdive AD2065. This watch is available from addiesdivewatches.com for €81. So firstly, let's look at the box that the watch comes in, and then I'll talk you through the specifications of the piece. So the watch comes in this black plastic pelican style case which has 4 clips. I'll show you the interior. So on the underside of the lid we have a foam panel, and there's also a second foam panel in the base. The 2 foam panels do a good job of protecting the watch in transit from any damage. So Addiesdive deserve credit here, because if you compare this to the cardboard watch boxes that Pagani Design are using at a similar price point of €81, this black plastic pelican style case is better quality, and I'm pleased to see Addiesdive using it. But I'm going to be critical because it has the old emblem and old Addiesdive font of the logo. They should really update it to match the logo used on the dial. With regards to the items you get with the watch, this is the plastic guarantee card, and the AD2065 is covered by a 2-year international warranty, which is very good. This is the tag, and again it should have the updated logo. We still have the original emblem and font of the old Addiesdive logo. And you also get this owner's instruction manual. Again, it's still branded with the old emblem and logo. They need to update this to match the dial logo. The owner's instruction manual covers the operation of the movement used, which is the Rondo caliber 515.24H quartz. And lastly, one also gets this pin punch. Stainless steel, nice knurled finishing to it, no sharp edges, and this is used with a hammer to punch out the push pins used in the Oyster style bracelet, so good to get that included. So, with regards to the specifications of the piece, we have a 36.9mm case diameter, and this is notable because Addiesdive actually specified that this is a 36mm piece, but I can confirm the AD2065 is actually a 36.9mm, not a 36 as specified. I measure all the watches I review on my channel using my digital caliper vernier, and I can confirm that it is 36.9, so it's nearly 37mm, not 36. That's something to bear in mind. We have a lug to lug measurement of 46mm. We have a thickness of 11.2mm and a lug width of 19mm. The Oyster style bracelet tapers from 19mm at the lugs down to 16mm at the 2-button push clasp, and as you can see the 2-button push clasp is signed to high standard with the Addiesdive emblem and also the old style logo engraved. Now again, they need to improve the continuity of design here, because we've got one logo on the dial which is aesthetically pleasing. I like the new fonts used on their daily wear pieces, but they're still using the dive piece emblem and logo on the clasp and also the case back and even on the crown. So they really need to update it to have continuity. Same logo and emblem used on the crown, the dial, and also the case back and the clasp, as you can see. Now the engraving is done to a good standard, but however it would look better if they deleted the emblem and simply have the new font Addiesdive logo engraved to match the dial. So we've got a boxed top hat crystal with blue tinted AR coating. Now this is a cost-cutting measure, and I'm going to be critical of it. It should be sapphire crystal at this price point. It's not. It's actually mineral crystal. And they've made a mistake in using blue tinted AR coating because this is a silver dial. Blue tinted AR coating works very well with blue dials because the blue tinting of the AR coating complements the blue tone of the dial. But when you have white or silver dials, and this is a silver metallic dial, clear AR coating is better, because I dislike the blue hue. When you tilt the piece at an oblique angle, the AR coating does work well, but however, you get this blue hue to it, as you can see, and it's distracting. It doesn't improve or enhance the clarity of the dial, the legibility of it, the ease, to be able to read the dial clearly. Clear AR coating works better than blue tinted. That is the point I'm making. So I think that they need to change using blue tinted AR coating to clear AR coating, and that would improve it. It's a real shame that they've used mineral crystal. They could have even used K1 hardened glass, because K1 hardened glass is a compromise. It's less expensive than sapphire, but more expensive than mineral crystal. It's more scratch resistant than mineral crystal, but this mineral crystal is not going to be as scratch resistant as sapphire, and I think that they should consider updating it to sapphire crystal to further enhance it. The boxed top hat profile to the double domed mineral crystal is very aesthetically pleasing, and because it's double domed, one doesn't get the distortion effect of a single dome crystal which is flat on the underside. So when you look at it straight on, the clarity is good despite the use of the blue tinted AR coating. BGW9 on the applied indices and the dolphin hands. The hands are correctly proportioned and the mirror polished to a high standard, and that complements the high quality mirror polishing on the applied indices. I like the font of the new logo. The printing of the dial, the logo, and also the Arabic numerals on the 24-hour scale and the minute 6 on the chapter ring, they're all done very well. It's crisp, high definition printing, it's not blurry, and the font isn't too thick, it's nice and fine. So they deserve credit because the font and the printing of the new logo is very aesthetically pleasing, and it does look good on the silver dial. They've also used squares on the indexes, which are loomed with BGW9, so they've got it correct for a daily wear piece. The legibility of the GMT hour hand is good because it's a blued hand and it contrasts very well with the silver dial. So I like the dial layout. The execution of it is very good. The quality of the application of the indices, the BGW9 and the mirror polishing on the dolphin hands is all good. Proportions of all the hands are good, and I like that the minute hand extends all the way to the minute ticks, and also the second hand extends to the minute ticks on the chapter ring. Often with low tier Chinese brands, the hands are too small, they're too under proportioned and too short, but these hands, which are dolphin hands, are correctly proportioned. So let's talk about the positives and the negatives of the bracelet. The positives are it doesn't pull arm hair, so that's good. No sharp edges to the flanks, no sharp edges to the links, so it's well finished. The brushed satin finishing has a beautiful luster to it, and the mirror polishing to the flanks is done to a good standard. Push pins are a cost-cutting measure rather than using screw pins, but however one has to be magnanimous about these kind of cost-cutting measures because this is a low-tier piece costing €81. One has to be realistic and expect some cost cutting. But the negatives of the bracelets are this. We have longitudinal, lateral and up and down play in every single direction on the centre link of the oyster style bracelet inside the female pivoted end links. So to clarify, the end link itself, which is solid, is a good tight fit to the head of the piece, so that is good. But the tolerances and the build quality are poor because the hole inside the centre link of the female pivoted end link is too large, and that means that it rattles around the spring bar. We've got significant lateral, longitudinal and up and down play in every direction. The same problem exists on every single one of the oyster style links because if you look at the bracelet, it's got significant play. It's a very sloppy bracelet. And this is the problem with using push pins rather than screw pins. One doesn't get a tight tolerance and the holes are too large. So the problem is it rattles. Now I'll just check the other side for continuity. We have the same problem. If you look at the centre link in the female pivoted end link, there's lateral, longitudinal and up and down play in every direction, and it rattles. And the same problem exists with every single one of the links. Now the cumulative effect of all this play in the bracelet is it's very sloppy, it rattles on the wrist. So on both sides of the bracelet you get this annoying rattling noise, and also the play is excessive. My concern with this is the reliability of it long term, because when you have poor tolerances with push pins in bracelet links, it exacerbates the wear. Basically it accelerates it. So eventually what's going to happen is the push pins are such a loose fit in the links that they're going to work their way loose and then eventually come out of the links, or alternatively fail because it accelerates the wear. So very loose and sloppy bracelet, and this is the worst aspect of the watch, the amount of play. They really need to tighten up the tolerances in the push pins and the holes drilled in the bracelet. The clasp is well finished. Beautiful luster to the 316L grade stainless steel. Nice large mirror polished bevel which marks the transition between the outer body and also the flanks. And I'm pleased to see they've used 5 micro adjustment holes rather than the minimum 2 or 3. This allows for plenty of fine tuning of the fit. So it's easy to get the perfect fits because the bracelet only has full links. There are no half links either side of the clasp. So it's good to see 5 links used. No sharp edges to it, no burrs, doesn't have sharp corners. Nice heavy gauge to the 316L grade stainless steel. So the quality of the finishing to the clasp is excellent, and unlike Pagani design, there are no sharp corners or sharp edges, so it's better finished. The interior, solid mill 316L grade stainless steel, beautiful luster to it, no sharp edges, no sharp corners to it, so it's good. But again, I have to be critical because If you look at the end of the bracelet, we've got significant play in the spring bar where it joins the milled clasp, as you can see. So lateral, longitudinal and side to side play in every single direction, and it's significant. Now, one can be magnanimous about a small amount of play at this price point. It is a low tier piece, but we're talking about significant play. I'll show you the spring bar in the body of the clasp. Just bear with me, I'll get the camera to focus. Look at the amount of play. We're talking about significant play because it rattles. And it's lateral, longitudinal and up and down play in every single direction. Now you look at that amount of play. This is wholly unacceptable, regardless of this being a low tier piece costing €81. It's very simple to execute this correctly because Addiesdive simply need to drill the correct size hole in the body of the clasp for the end of the spring bar. And that means that the spring bar is not going to rattle inside the clasp. And the same problem exists if you look at the end of the bracelet. Look at the amount of play there. It's significant. And it's simply down to the fact that they've drilled holes in the ends of the bracelet links too large for the spring bars they're using in the mill clasp. Even the centre hinge pin, the main hinge pin in the centre of the mill clasp, has significant play. Longitudinal, lateral, side to side play and up and down play. And that's simply due to the pin they're using is undersized for the holes they're drilling, and they really need to tighten up the tolerances. So there's significant play in the 3 pins in the milled clasp, and all the bracelet push pins have significant play. Right, so let's look at the case back. Solid 316L grade stainless steel case back, nice flat profile to the centre section, and that's the benefits of using a quartz movement. They could have used the Seiko NH34A, which of course is a GMT movement, but that would have made the thickness of this piece 13mm. They've made the correct decision by using a quartz GMT movement, which is the Ronda 515.24H, because that is only 3mm thick, and that means they have reduced the thickness of this piece down to only 11.2. If they'd used the NH34A, it would be 13mm. So 11.2 is good, and because we've got a quartz movement rather than the NH34A with a rotor, you can see how flat the case back is. So they've made the correct decision, and they deserve credit for that with regards to the movements. 100 meters is strong specification for a daily wear piece. 50 meters would be acceptable. 100 is very strong with a screw down crown and screw down stainless steel case back. So nice design to the emblem, but again, we've got the old Addiesdive emblem, which is for dive pieces. This is a daily wear piece, hence the update to the logo on the dial. They should simply engrave the back of the case back with the Addiesdive logo in the new font, or simply make it sterile. Because using the dive emblem on this piece doesn't fit. It's a daily wear piece, it's not a dive watch. They really need to update the emblem on the back or make it a sterile case back. It's a main negative of this watch because although the engraving is done to a good standard, it's actually very sharp. And when you're wearing this on the wrist, you can feel the sharp engraving. It actually rubs against the wrist. It's abrasive and it's noticeable. So it's, again, this is easy for Addiesdive to improve. They simply polish the case back after engraving it, and that will remove the sharp edges of the high definition engraving because the engraving is so sharp that it actually scratches the wrist. So it's an uncomfortable piece to wear for long periods of time, such as 8 to 12 hours per day, because of the scratchy, abrasive engraving. It's really like having a disc of sandpaper against your wrist, constantly rubbing your skin, and of course that abrasion is uncomfortable to wear for long periods of time. They simply need to polish the case backs, and that will delete the sharp edges. It will deburr the sharp edges to the engraving, and it's a main negative of the watch, the irritant case back. Right, so I'll give you a wrist shot and you can see how it fits on my 8-inch wrist. Now, I haven't sized the bracelet, and I'm pleased to report, as you can see, I can easily slide 2 fingers underneath the bracelet and clasp. There is plenty of length on the oyster style bracelet. This will fit up to a 9-inch wrist with no difficulties, but of course it's 36.9 by 46mm lug to lug. This piece is clearly meant for collectors with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches respectively. If you are a collector with a larger wrist of 7 to 8 inches, I think this lacks wrist presence. It's not large enough on the wrist to satisfy. But if you're a collector with a smaller wrist of 6 to 7 inches, you will enjoy it because it's only 112 grams, with all the links in the bracelet. So it's a light piece, and that's another benefit of it being quartz powered by the Ronda caliber 515.24H rather than using an NH34A. If they'd used the NH34A, this would be tall and top heavy for a 36.9 head of the piece, but it would be 13mm thick. Even with the boxed top hat mineral crystal, which does add significant thickness, it's still only 11.2. So Addiesdive deserve credit because the proportions are good. 36.9 means that it's suitable for collectors with a smaller wrist. The boxed top hat style mineral crystal does give an aesthetically pleasing vintage look, and I like the mirror polished flanks, which contrast with the brushed satin finished tops of the lugs. The mirror polished bezel is finished to a good standard, and it's a very aesthetically pleasing piece. The female pivoted end links do give a good fit. They pull the end of the oyster style bracelet snug to the wrist. I like the flat case back because it means that the head of the piece sits close. We don't have a large gap underneath the tips of the lugs. So it's a good looking piece, but the blue tint of the AR coating really spoils it because the metallic silver dial and the metallic mirror polished dolphin hands and the applied indices are very nice. I like the way they catch the light, but I dislike the blue hue. On a blue dial watch it would look good, but clear AR coating really does look better than blue tinted AR coating when we have a silver dial. So proportions are good, and I like the thickness at 11.2. At 112 grams, it does feel very comfortable, but the taper is incorrect, as I've detailed. 19mm is odd. It's going to make it difficult for you to change this bracelet for straps. 20 would have been much better, and a 20 to 16 taper would have been better proportions. 19 just looks too slender on the bracelet, and I think it looks too feminine. 20 would give it more meat, and I think that it would look better at the lugs to have a 20mm female pivoted end links. So they could improve on the proportions. 20 to 16 would look better, and of course 20 is the industry standard for straps and lugs. I think that it would improve the strap options. Right, so let's test the screw down crown execution. Solid 316L grade stainless steel crown, coin edge finish to a high standard, but again we've got the old diver style emblem on it, and I think they should delete that and simply engrave an A for Addiesdive and use the same font for the A that they've used on the new logo, which is very aesthetically pleasing. If they engrave the A or emboss it, that would add continuity to the design, but using the diver style emblem doesn't fit on a daily wear piece. Let's test the screw down crown execution. It feels rough, and this is a disappointment. Now, it does unscrew and screw back down okay, so it's acceptable, and one has to be magnanimous. There are going to be some cost-cutting measures and some QC issues at this price point, because they've used the Ronda Swiss-made 515.24H quartz, which is expensive, so the movement is expensive, but it feels rough. It's not smooth. There's room for improvement on the tolerances of the machining of the internal thread of the stainless steel crown and the external thread of the stainless steel crown tube. They could be made smoother if they get the machining better. So it does work, but it feels rough and gritty. It doesn't feel smooth to operate. Now, let's test the execution of the movement. So this is powered by the Ronda 515.24H. The architecture of the 515.24H is the same as the 515. It's based upon, they simply add a GMT complication to the 515. And as you can see, pulling out the crown to the first click position is the, pulling it out to the first click position is the date complication. If you look at the date complication at 6, you can see rotating the crown clockwise advances the date complication. Now, it doesn't click over to the next day of the month with a positive index like the Seiko NH34A, for example. It's very light and there's no discernible clicking. It's so light and delicate that it feels perfectly smooth. So it does take some more care. That's something to note. If you're used to the NH35A, it has a very satisfying click. Every day of the month has a quick set click. But with this Ronda 515.24H, it's very light. The clicks are so light that they just feel smooth. So you have to take more care when you're setting the date. In the date setting position, if you rotate the crown anti-clockwise, that also rotates the GMT hour hand, which is blued, as you can see, with an arrowhead tip. And it feels very smooth. But you have to bear in mind, you can only rotate it clockwise. So if you go too far past the hour and miss it, you have to cycle through the full 24 hours again. You can't, when you rotate the crown anti-clockwise, it advances the date, not the hour hand. So it's more difficult to set than an NH34A, because you can only rotate the hour hand clockwise, you can't rotate it anti-clockwise because the hour hand is driven off the date complication. But it does work very well. There's minimal back play to it. When you rotate the crown, the GMT hour hand immediately responds, and it does feel very smooth. The friction is medium light resistance to it. So it's easy to align it correctly with the GMT hour you want, and it's easy to set the date, but you need to be more careful with it. Pulling it out to the second click position hacks the movement. The Ronda 515.24H has hacking, and we're now in the time setting position. There is some slight back play in it, and that's a characteristic of quartz movements like this, that when you rotate the crown clockwise and anti-clockwise, there is a little bit of play in the gearing because it only has one jewel and minimal friction, and it does take more rotation on the crown to get the dolphin hand to actually respond, and it's not as responsive and tight as an NH34A, of course, which is a mechanical movement. Pushing it back in, it's got a nice positive click, and that restarts the movement. You can see the second hand begins to tick around the dial once again. So it does work very well. The Ronda 515.24H is a reliable Swiss-made quartz movement. The correct choice for this because it reduces the thickness of the piece down to only 11.2 because the movement is only 3mm. So let's test screwing the crown back down. Now they do interface well. The threads do pick up quickly, but it does feel gritty. It's a stiff crown. There is friction and it's significant. So I would say that they need to improve the tolerances and the quality control of the screw down crown. 100 meters is strong specification. They could have used a push-pull crown and 50 meters for a daily wear piece. So the specification is strong, but the execution of it is poor. They need to improve. It feels like a rough, gritty crown, screw down crown. Right, so let's do a loom test and we'll see how the loom performs when it's charged up to the absolute maximum. So as always, I'm going to use my 100 UV LED torch to charge it up to the absolute peak. Right, so that's now fully charged, and as you can see, it has not disappointed. One has to give credit here because this is a daily wear piece. We're not looking at a dive watch, and of course it uses dolphin hands, so they're relatively slender in profile. They don't allow for a large plot or a large area of BGW9 to be applied. But we're clearly looking at 5 to 6 layers on the squares on the applied indices and also on the dolphin hands. The dolphin hands in particular are glowing exceptionally brightly, and the quality of the BGW9 here is outstanding. Far better than what Pagani Design are using on a similar price point of €81. So good colour tone match between the BGW9 on the indices and also the dolphin hands. You can see the legibility is good. The exciter is glowing very brightly and it will continue to glow for a good length of time. And we're clearly not looking at the cost-cutting measure of 3 to 4 layers as per other low-tier Chinese brands. This is 5 to 6, which is optimum. So very good. I like the blue tone of the BGW9. The dolphin hands are clearly legible. Good proportions because you can clearly see the minute hand. Dolphin hand is longer than the hour hand, so easy to read the time in the dark. And I think that the squares of BGW9 next to the applied indices on the chaptering are good because you can clearly read where the indices are in the dark. And as you can see, it's not fading whatsoever. So Addiesdive deserve credit because they could have cut production costs with the loom and used 3 to 4 layers, but this is 5 to 6. It's strong performance and I really like it. Right, so let's discuss the movement use because it's one of my favourite aspects of the piece. So this is powered by the Ronda 515.24H, and as I've detailed, the architecture of the 515.24H quartz is the same as the 515 it's based upon. Ronda simply add a GMT complication to it, and the GMT hour hand is driven off the date complication as I've demonstrated in the date setting position. If you rotate the crown in the opposite direction, it moves the GMT hour hand around the dial. Reliability is excellent. It's a robust quartz movement. No reliability or quality control issues reported whatsoever. It's a reliable, well-proven workhorse quartz GMT movement. It has one jewel and hacking, and it has a 45-month battery life, which is impressive. So to put that into perspective, 45 months is 3.75 years, so 3.75 years. Usually quartz movements typically have a 2-year battery life. 3 years is exceptional. 3.75 years, nearly 4 years, is outstanding, and that's the main benefit of the Ronda 515.24H, the long battery life. So potentially you could buy this piece and wear it for 3.75 years without ever needing to change the battery, so that is a main positive. The stated accuracy is -10 to +20 seconds per month. So I want you to consider that for a moment. That's not -10 to +20 per day or per week, that is per month. So better than 1 second per day, 1 second per day accuracy. So it's an incredibly accurate movement, -10 to +20. And I think they deserve credit because they could have used a less accurate mechanical movement such as the Seiko NH34A, and that would be less accurate but also add significant thickness to the piece. At 11.2, this is a thin daily wear piece, even though it uses a box double dome mineral crystal. One would expect this to be 13mm with the NH34A. So correct choice with a quartz movement. The feature I most like about the Ronda 515.24H is it has a battery saving function. They call it the power saving mechanism. If you're not wearing this watch daily and you want to extend the battery life, you can do that significantly, because if you unscrew the crown and pull it out, it activates the power saving mechanism of the movement, and that reduces the power consumption of the battery by 70%. So for example, you could extend it from 3.75 years or 45 months to 4 or even 5 years simply by unscrewing the crown and pulling it out when the watch is not in use. So as part of a collection, if you wear this in rotation, if you unscrew the crown and pull it out when the watch is not in use, you will extend that 45-month battery life to 4 or 5 years. So it's good to have that 70% power saving function, and the long battery life is the main benefits of the movement. So accurate, reliable, durable, it's robust, no quality control issues, and it's Swiss made. Now I've removed the case back of this piece and I can confirm they are actually using genuine Ronda Swiss made 515.24H quartz movements. It's not a Chinese clone. Addiesdive deserve credit because they are importing the Ronda 515.24Hs from Switzerland. It is a real movement. It's not a clone or a copy of it. And of course that does significantly increase the production cost of the piece, and therefore they've had to make sacrifices in other areas, which we've seen. So I'm going to declare it good value, but I'm going to say it's poor quality. Now I have to say good value because of the movement. The movement alone makes this good value regardless of any QC issues, because it's an expensive quartz movement at this price point. The Ronda 515.24H is more expensive than the Seiko NH34A. They've made the correct choice with the movement. It's good quality. To get a Swiss quartz movement at this price point is very good, but the quality overall is poor. The negatives really do outweigh the positives because we've got the scratchy case back with the sharp edges to the engraving. That is very irritant. And the bracelet is the biggest disappointment because we've got significant play in the links and also the end links going into the mill clasp as well. It's a very poor quality rattly bracelet. So the other thing is the use of mineral crystal is a cost-cutting measure too far. It has to be sapphire or at the very minimum K1 hardened mineral glass, which is a compromise between mineral and sapphire. Mineral is just not good enough. It's going to be prone to being scuffed and scratched, and of course with a domed box top hat profile to it, it does stick out, so it's going to catch a lot of scratches. So I think they have to upgrade the crystal to using sapphire crystal and delete the blue tinted ale coating, use clear, that would improve it. So good movement inside a poor quality watch. I'm going to recommend it to you for consideration, but bear in mind the quality control issues such as the gritty crown. These are things you need to be aware of. I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Addiesdive AD2065. Please feel free to post your own comments below the video. Thank you for watching.